Well, welcome to the show. I am your host, Dr. Rico Piccone. I'm interviewing a former student of mine, an alumnus of St. Martin's University Mechanical Engineering Program, Jeremiah Enright.
Yep.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah,
This
no
is
problem.
literally the first show ever. So we're all new to this.
I'm glad to be the first guest.
Yeah, you are. You're the inaugural
That's right.
guest. So, thanks for joining us. Your resume is very extensive already. You're a recent engineer, but before becoming an engineer, you had a military career.
Yep.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
7 years in the Navy, joined right out of high school. Spent pretty much my whole career overseas.
Wow.
So I worked on electronics as a radar technician at an airfield in Spain. And then I worked on comm gear on an aircraft carrier out of Japan.
Wow.
So
Good for you.
yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed it, but just after 7 years, it was time to do something new.
Nice. And then did you come directly to St. Martin's from there?
No, I moved back to Spain as a civilian, opened a bar. Or I didn't open a bar, I took over a bar.
Took over a bar.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did that for a couple of years.
I will say this is one part of your bio that I remember. That you,
That's
that
right.
you had a bar in Spain.
That's the one thing everybody remembers.
It's like, yep, that's definitely the thing that I would want to have tried. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
Mhm.
I mean, let's say there doesn't want to open a bar someday, right?
Right, yeah.
But we did that for a couple of years,
Uh-huh.
then closed. Then I decided to move back to the States and go to school
Good for
because I
you.
had the GI Bill. So
Nice.
figured it had been about 10 years, I think. Yeah, 10 years exactly since I got out of high school.
Wow.
So time to maybe figure out what I want to do, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, and your class was very memorable to me. You guys were juniors
Mhm.
when I first started at
Yeah.
St. Martin's. So
Yeah, so when because that was essentially when we started all of our real engineering courses too, right? So,
yeah. It was a fun crew. So
Yeah.
yeah. I remember Chris in the front row. I still remember where he sat
yeah.
in the front row.
It's hard to forget Chris.
It is hard to forget Chris, isn't it? Love you, Chris. Okay. So, how did you get interested in mechanical engineering?
So I wanted to do something that I knew you could find work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like we were talking about earlier. That's what you want to be able to have a job.
Yes. That's very nice.
I had experience with electronics. I loved being an electronic engineer or technician, but I didn't want to do engineering for it, right? Just did not seem like it would be enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I wanted something that was broad, and that's what mechanical engineering is. You can do anything with mechanical engineering.
It's true.
You can work any industry. I mean, you're not pigeonholed into only aerospace or only, you can do structural design if you want. You can get into aerospace. If you look at like job postings, it's this specific engineer or mechanical.
Yeah.
So
It's sort of known as being the kind of versatile
Yeah.
engineering. Yeah. It's nice, especially when the economy changes and things. Yeah.
And
One
I mean-
industry will have a valley and another a peak. So
I mean, I've only been doing engineering for 4.5 years, and I've already worked in 3 different fields.
wow. And what fields are those?
So I interned at Intel,
Mm-hmm.
so the tech industry, and then I worked for a company that designs tunnel boring machines. So
Yeah.
heavy mining,
Heavy
heavy construction. And then now I'm currently working at Blue Origin, so aerospace.
Aerospace. Yeah. Good for you.
And I had a little stint at the shipyard.
The shipyard too. So yes, you've even been in the defense government world as well, sector, if you will.
Yeah.
Public sector? Is that what that would be?
I guess that'd be the public sector.
The public sector.
Yeah.
If anything is, yes.
So.
Well, good. Well, let's go back to your St. Martin's experience a little bit. What was your favorite mechanical engineering course?
I really enjoyed fluids. It came to me easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the mechatronics classes a lot.
Mm.
So, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Favorite teacher, mechatronics teacher.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see you know who's filling your glass tonight.
Right.
Non-ME course.
History of rock and roll.
Oh, wow.
Easy.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Who was your professor for that?
I can't remember. I did it over summer, so it was.
Oh, yeah.
It was a quick, month long.
Right. We probably had a cameo from one of the Rolling Stones as a professor. Yeah. I'll look back. I'll check my notes, but I'm sure that's what we've got. So, what did you like most about the ME program at St. Martin's?
The small classes. So I was coming back 10 years removed from school.
Yeah.
I did not want to be in a big universe. I would have got lost.
Yeah.
Right? So trying to relearn how to just be a student again.
Mm-hmm.
So it was easy to go to your office, get help, go to any of the teachers' offices, get help if I needed it. And we were the same class from beginning to end.
So
right?
the cohort that went through, yeah.
So we all knew each other, and we could get together and help each other out and things like that.
Yeah, I'm always preaching this. I'm always saying the students who don't find a crew or whatever it is, a clique, a pod nowadays, struggle the most because without that support, it's very challenging. Because even this homework assignments in mechanical engineering classes are just traditionally long, challenging processes, and you can't do those without making mistakes. So checking with each other, making sure that you all have the same answer, helping. I think the process of teaching each other too. Like, what are the things that I understand about this assignment? I can help teach you. You can help teach me something else.
Well, and that was the thing. Some of us were good in fluids, and others were really just picked up, heat transfer really well, or, so you could talk with each other about, like, I don't understand this class, and well, I do, so I'll help you out.
Right.
Okay, well, I'll help you out with this other class because I understand what's going on. Because some things just clicks for you, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And I mean, our group, I was probably 6 to 8 of us usually that would go and.
Where'd you guys work? Where'd you guys hang out?
We'd just grab a classroom wherever.
So we all know it's a lot of work getting through the program. Any mechanical engineering program is going to be a challenge to get through. It's sort of notoriously one of the most challenging programs out there. So, do you think? Now that you're on the other side, I know this is students will be watching this who are just starting out in their process, and they're probably looking up a really steep mountain that goes for 4 years. So, would you say that it's worth all that?
Yes, because even if at the end of the day, after you get it and you get a job, you start working, and you find out that maybe mechanical engineering isn't really what you like, having that degree just opens up so many fields. I did project management for a little bit. Like just knowing, the employer knowing that you can make it through the degree program shows that they're willing to invest in if you as a project manager, or even if you want to do business or something, right? Like I've read before that a lot of companies are starting to look at engineers instead of people with MBAs,
Mm.
pulling them in, right? Because you think different.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's totally worth it because you can get a job that's not even in engineering.
Yeah.
If it'll help tremendously.
Yeah.
And it's only 4 years.
So yeah, it's 4 years. I mean,
4 years is nothing.
It's 4 years is nothing. You didn't need a social life for those 4 years.
No.
Yeah.
It's not the best years of your life.
That's right. It's not when you're young and hot. So yeah, well, that's good. That's good. We've got a little bit of a background on your education experience. Is there anything before we kind of move on to the next bit regarding your education that you would have done differently now, or that you would advise people to do?
I took a crash course in calculus the summer before I started school.
Mm.
So I didn't have a very good foundation of calculus because I had taken a little in high school, but that was 10 years prior.
Mm.
You're not going to remember that after a decade.
Right, yeah.
So I took a crash course in calculus, and I struggled the entire time through
All the calculus.
through the entire engineering program
Yeah.
because I would always have to go back and like reteach myself every semester.
Yeah.
What we were doing as far as the calculus side.
Yeah.
So I would have, instead of rushing through calculus, I wish I would have just actually taken my time.
That makes
But
sense.
it didn't work because of the classes I had already had from previous school that I had done through the Navy or through Running Start and stuff like that.
Mm.
The time didn't work out that I could have done a full
Yeah.
calculus thing, right?
Yeah.
It would have pushed me back a whole nother year.
Mm.
So I did a crash course through the summer so I could.
That's
Because
that's tough. Tough
I
call sometimes.
finished my degree in 3 years.
Wow.
I started in 2013.
Wow.
But that was going full time, summer, everything.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I already had some classes, so.
Yeah. It's tough to make it through an engineering program like from
Yeah.
start to finish in 4 years. I mean, a lot of people who take 5 to get
Yeah.
through. So yeah.
Well, I would, like I said, I had half of the. Well, I won't call them bullshit classes. But I had half of the other
General
classes.
education.
Yes. I had half of those already done.
Yes. Okay, that's good.
So that helped me do the 3 year.
helps
but
you
it-
focus on it.
But that's also when you're doing, those first 2 years are when you're doing your calculus classes.
Right. Yeah.
I pretty much already had those first 2 years done, so.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's worth
It's-
remembering that calculus was invented by Newton, whose laws mechanical engineers are constantly applying to every mechanics problem. It's called
Yes.
mechanics. It was invented, calculus was invented for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, mechanical engineers use a lot of calculus. We don't always do a good job of communicating that to young students
Yeah.
that it's really important to have that calculus background and I would say the same, at least for my classes, for differential equations and linear algebra. It's just they're
I
really helpful.
differential equations eventually I started to get. Linear algebra. I just,
Struggle bus?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I was just powering through, hoping to pass.
Yeah. Yeah, some classes are like that. That was
Yeah.
chemistry for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, chemistry was not a good time. Not a good time in chemistry. In my lab, oh my god, barely escaped that lab alive. So good. Well, we've heard a little bit about your career. You've got the Intel experience, a mining company, and also your most recent position, and then also the public sector. So, do you want to talk a little bit about like the industries, the like positioning of each of these places, and sort of how you got started in those?
Sure. So Intel was They at the time they had a facility in DuPont, and they had their interns, a few every year. So I applied up there, and they called me back and got the job one day.
That's
right?
great. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah, and it was a really nice internship. So like there are internships, and then there are like practically already have a real job internships.
It wasn't even like an internship. It was a job.
Yeah.
Really. I spent most of the time in the lab. A little bit of like design engineering work, but not a whole lot. It was mostly because still was an internship. It was in support of the mechanical engineering team. So doing a lot of testing on prototypes and things like that.
Are these like, I know that there are some proprietary things that you can't talk about, but were there like thermal?
So it was the mechanical side of their server processors, and the retaining mechanisms for the server processors. The processors need to be held down with it was 200 pounds required for all the contacts, and to make contact, right? But you had to do that with using only 8 foot-pounds of torque for ergonomics when you're installing these things, right? So it was all the different spring mechanisms and things like that. So when they were designing these new ones, which they're out on the market now, I can't remember which ones they were. We had to go and test that they would work, and they would repeat X amount of cycles while still producing the load that was required, and things like that. So there's a lot of hands-on.
Yeah. Sounds like fun.
I got to do a lot of environmental testing with oven. Like we would have to go and bake them. So put them in the oven for 2 weeks at 500 degrees, and then take them out, and make sure that they still function properly. I got to get introduced into different materials, and when you're in class and you're going through your mechanics and materials and these types of things, and you're learning about the different steel alloys and this and that, it doesn't really, but being there in person and seeing how it does react and the actual yield of everything, because I did a lot of testing with instrons, and so you get to see it in person. So that was like, oh shit, school's actually.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to school to learn something I'm never going to do. Right.
And
which a lot of people feel that they're going to, a lot of stuff you learn in school you're not ever going to do, but here I'm actually using it. So.
You're actually using it, and you're still in school, and you're already using it at your internship job. Yeah. And that's like the instron testing would be something that you would see in the mechanics of materials lab, for instance, when you're doing tensile testing or compression testing potentially. And so you were doing that type of testing at work.
Yeah.
And you had probably done that class like a year or two before. Yeah, and then you had maybe let's skip to your current gig now. So it's relatively new. You got hired recently.
Yeah, about a little over a month ago. Got hired on up at Blue Origin as an avionics design mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
So our group, it's a small group, there's only about 8 of us, and we are designing all of the enclosures and structural supports and everything for all the avionics for the new Glen.
And what are avionics?
Essentially, avionics are all the electrical and electronics for the launch vehicle, for the rocket, right?
So yeah, it's using like that how we use mechatronics.
Yeah.
It's like using that same sort of way of terminology, like the tronics.
Yes. Yeah.
Onyx, I guess, is the part
it's electronics for airplanes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's great. That's a really cool. So you got the structural support there.
Yeah, and so our biggest concern is vibration and heat transfer, right? Obviously, there's a lot of vibrations. Right. A lot of random vibrations that you can't model out, really. Enclosures that we design are also acting as heat sinks. So we got to do thermal analysis on everything that we're working on. And then what I really like about this job is I'm essentially, our group, we do the design, analysis, build, and testing.
Oh, that's nice.
So we're doing prototyping still.
Yeah.
So I still get to be in the lab all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Set it up on the vibe tables. I'm not running the vibe tables. They have the technicians that know how to do that, do it, right?
Nice. And they make the prototypes for you?
So we either do prototyping in-house or we'll send it out somewhere local and get it done, right?
Nice.
Because it's everything we do is CNC machining.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I get to, be in there and test it and see if something breaks, and you always like watching stuff break. Right?
Oh yeah, watching stuff break is, if you don't like that, you're in the wrong field. Mechanical engineering, where stuff breaking is definitely one of your kicks. So what does a typical work day for you look like? I know we're in COVID times, so it's a little unusual.
Yeah.
But
so like I said, I'm lucky enough now that if I want to be in the lab or down in the shop or the manufacturing area, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to if I don't want to.
Yeah.
If I want to spend all day just at my computer designing stuff, I can do that.
Mm-hmm. That includes remote right now, right? So you don't even.
Yes. If I want to drive into the lab, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the engineers, they just kind of hand it off to the technicians to build everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other engineers will go down there and build it themselves.
Nice.
So,
they'll get in the machine shop
and I'm very much hands-on, so I can go in and do all that myself.
Nice. Do you like building stuff? You like getting on the CNC yourself, getting on the lathe, that type of thing? Nice.
Yeah, it gets me away from the computer, right?
Yeah, it's nice. I enjoy it, even though I'm not good at it.
Yes.
Like I'm a classic break the bit guy. That's me. Like every time I'm like, damn it, like I broke the bit again.
Yeah.
Like that's I'm a liability in the lab, but I still enjoy it. That's great. I know you started your internship before you graduated, so I want to talk about how you went about finding your job. So maybe first of all, finding an internship. How did you go about that? Obviously, as we've seen so far, an internship's so important. It's such a great part of the experience.
I think I was just on Google looking for internships that were close.
Yeah.
I'd applied for some summer ones that were remote. I applied for one over at the NASA facility in Cleveland.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I interviewed for that one. I didn't get that. I applied for one down in California, also with NASA. They called me back and offered me it, but it was during the spring.
Oh, yeah.
So I couldn't take that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, Intel called me, and we had a student that was a year. He was a senior at the time. He worked there also.
Oh, nice. Did you end up in the same group, or?
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So the mechanical group was really small, right?
Cool.
And I knew him a little bit from school, so I used him as a reference after I found out that, I applied there. So it does a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then they called me. It was a quick, honestly, probably one of the easiest interviews I ever had.
Oh wow.
I thought it was going to be tough, and it seemed like the manager, which was going to be my manager, was in a hurry because it was a Friday.
Oh yeah.
Talked to him for about 10 minutes on the phone, and then he asked me if I could come in and start.
That makes sense.
So
that's great. Yeah, I have a buddy who says that. So he's from Alabama.
Yeah.
He says, when you go car shopping, is during the Alabama-Auburn football game, because nobody wants to be selling cars during that time. So you go, and they'll give you whatever deal you want.
Right.
So that's good. Get your interview on a Friday if possible. People want to get out of there, and want to get home a little early, beat the traffic.
But I had applied for a lot of internships. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's good. That's a good advice.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear back from a lot. I got a lot of rejections.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's life. You're not going to get everything, right?
Right. So, yeah.
Just keep going.
I mean, I think it's a truism, but it's true, of course, is that if you are successful, that means that you've had a lot of failures.
Yes. So, very much so.
Yeah. That's very good advice. And so now, you've had a few jobs. You've been out of school for a little while, and you recently got a job at a great company.
Yeah.
So like, what is your like advice to folks who are out there that are maybe they're in a few years they're going to be in your position where they've got a mechanical engineering job. They're looking for mechanical engineering jobs. What advice would you give them?
So, I ran into somebody I work with now at the Ford dealership a few years ago.
It's becoming a theme.
Yes.
Car dealerships are
right?
like a theme of the city. Yes.
I had worked with him. He was a senior mechanical engineer at Intel when I interned there. Mm-hmm. Ran into him just out of the blue. We started bullshitting. He had just started a job at Blue Origin, and he was just ranting and raving about it. He loved it. He told me to come over. Mm-hmm. So I started the application process. This would have been, about 2 years ago. Started going through it. The job I was working at, the mining company, which I really enjoyed working there. I liked everybody I was working with. They came to me out of the blue one day and asked me if I wanted to do project management. Mm-hmm. And that was an opportunity I couldn't pass that up, right? So I had to call my buddy back, say, hey, thanks for everything. He had been kind of pushing through, trying to get me an interview and everything.
Right. And how do you like your F-150?
Yeah, right. So I had to call him and say, hey, I just got this other offer, and so I can't move forward anymore with the Blue Origin thing. Mm-hmm. That was a very big struggle for me to.
Had to be a tough
I want to do, right?
Yeah.
I knew I already had this job.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to risk it for this other job? My biggest thing has always been like, do I like the people I work with, right?
Yeah.
In the Navy, there was some real shitty places I was working, but I always liked everybody I worked with, so it made it better.
Yeah.
I loved everybody I was working with at the time. Mm. So I didn't want to pass that up,
totally,
right? Or get rid of that.
That's worth a lot.
It is.
Working with people you like.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, a few years pass. I am looking for another job, and I call that guy back up.
Yeah.
And they were needing somebody at that point in time.
Nice.
So.
Yeah.
It was something that I used to never do, keeping in touch with people, networking. I started doing recently.
Yeah.
And it is ridiculous. But kids in your class now probably network all the time anyways.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to encourage it. Yeah, so, and that's one of the things, like, going through the program, they're not looking for immediate jobs. They may be looking for internships soon, but there's a tendency to be like, oh, I'll get that LinkedIn profile later.
Yeah.
But when you're going through, you're going to meet people. You're going to meet your fellow students. You're going to meet your faculty. You're going to meet the people maybe that you do end up interning with. And you're going to meet people like Jeremiah here, who's, at a really awesome company and is an alumnus of St. Martin's. So, start adding people to your network now. That's what I can try to tell people.
Be afraid to reach out to somebody that you haven't talked to in a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Worst they say is we don't have any openings or no.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask, then you don't know if they're going to say no.
Yeah.
I was hesitant to call this guy back because of he started helping me a couple years ago, and I had to tell him that I had to back out of it. So I was really hesitant to call him back.
Yeah.
But I did. So
it's good to do it, yeah.
Networking, and then the reason I had got that offer for project management is because I was willing to do I really rarely said no.
Yeah.
To an opportunity. They needed an engineer to travel to this job site. I'll go.
Yeah.
Last minute, I'll go. I'll do it. I volunteered for everything. I never said no. I never bitched about anything. Even if I hated it.
Yeah.
Never bitched about it. Yeah. Don't badmouth things.
Yeah, no, it's good. There's always that person in the office. We all know that person in the office who complains about everything, who's whining about everything all the time, and it's just not something that people really enjoy.
No,
especially in a professional setting. It's like it's your job or whatever. I mean, sometimes things suck, and some jobs do suck.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I have done a couple shitty jobs in my life. Sometimes, literally, I once was cleaning public restrooms as a job. So it gets worse. But if you're somebody who's handles things, doesn't complain about it, and it's people really appreciate it in a professional environment.
They do.
I mean, they know you go home and bitch about it to your family or whatever.
Yeah, but that's fine. Go vent somewhere. Go to the bar, vent with your buddies, to your family.
Yeah.
Just don't do it at work.
Yeah. I know it's something that I've seen a lot, and I've never quite understood it. And when I was doing my internships, it was funny because I could tell pretty quickly who the people in the office were that were just gonna be like whining about everything.
Yeah.
So I know that you're doing design, and you said you go into the lab a lot. You do design on your computer. So you're working on 3D part? So you're modeling. First of all, which modeling software do you use?
So we use Creo.
Creo, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you so you model up your parts, you draw them up, and they work into some assembly sometimes that's larger than your project, and so you interface with all that, and so you get a chance to work within the structure that already exists, kind of for it. That's cool.
Yeah, and so we work in kind of like in a controlled environment, right, where you got to check your parts out from a database, right? You do whatever it is you're doing, and then you check them back in, and it updates it so the entire vehicle stays up to date.
Right.
So then other people looking at it can see, because somebody needs to know, like for me, for instance, I got to bolt these enclosures up to something. I need to see what the bolt patterns are like. And if they change those, I need to be able to see, right?
Do you get notified if something like that changes? If it's
depending on the program, yeah. That's the one thing that would be nice if the school could teach, would be like have a wind chill or something like that. Because it's really complicated. Yeah, totally. It takes a while to, and then you're always nervous that, especially when you're new to working in that environment, that you don't want to accidentally check something out and screw it up, and then
you put it back in, and then the CEO's like, "Who messed up my rocket engine?"
Yeah. Right.
Like, it's the intern.
That would be something that would be nice, but like I said, that's
Well, I think that's really good. That's a really good suggestion, and I'll check with the folks we have that are working teaching that.
Yeah, they're all a little different. Like the last company I was working for, that mining company, we used Solid Edge, I think. So it's a little bit different than Creo, and you just gotta start playing with it.
Yeah. So do you go on and do like online tutorials when you first start? Or
I do a lot. Yeah. And I'll usually buy a book. I like to have a book.
Yeah.
I still have all my engineering books.
Yeah. That's a good. I think that it's always a question, especially now. Textbooks just continue to increase in price, and everybody's like, should I buy it? Should I? not buy it? Should I get the PDF
Yeah.
from the internet? You know, there's all that kind of questioning going on. And I always have a hard time knowing what to tell them in any specific case because everybody's situation is different. But I do think, I mean, for me, obviously, I use mine still all the time. And I think it's generally the case that you do. And it helps to have the book you learned with.
Yeah.
Like for me, because there's a topic, say heat transfer. Not something I use every day.
Mm-hmm.
I use on occasion. There'll be a problem where I'm like, okay, I want to find out how the heat transfer works in this part. How do I do this again?
Yeah.
What's the equation for convective heat transfer? I got to look it up. You can look it up on the internet. Just actually, I would say the internet is not as good of a resource for engineers as you would think.
It is not. It is hard to look up formulas or. It is. It's really tough.
Yeah.
You might be able to find a lecture, but then you got to scroll through hundreds of slides to figure out.
Right.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
Having the book is just.
Yeah, you kind of gotta have the book, and if it's a book that you're not familiar with, like say you just find a random PDF on the internet, well, all the variable names are different than you used, and you don't remember which chapters, and everything looks different. So if it's something that's familiar, it helps a lot. So having that book that you learned on, I do think is really useful.
And for me, I can flip through a book a lot quicker and find stuff a lot easier than scrolling through a PDF of a book.
I'm a big believer in having your textbook.
Plus, your home office, now you got all these smart books.
Right. You want to be able to impress people. When you have parties, you want to be able to this is my office. This is or I like to call mine because I'm very pretentious. My study,
There you go.
It's my study. I've got my books here.
Leather and rich mahogany.
Yes, that's right. And pipe tobacco. I don't even smoke. It just smells like that.
Just get the pipe tobacco candle and light that.
Yeah, it's my secret. You got it. So we're getting to the end of the interview. Our glasses are, mine's empty. You still have a little catching up to do.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's okay. You've been doing all the talking. What's your favorite thing that you've learned since graduation? So after you graduated, I know you came back and did the master's program, which I recommend to everyone out there. But I am curious. Since you graduated, so not in the context of school, what's the thing that you feel like you learned that's been maybe the most exciting to you, or your favorite thing?
It's a tough question.
Yeah, I have no idea how I would answer it, but fortunately I don't have to.
I don't know. I think maybe that mining company I was working for. So we were designing tunnel boring machines. Just the whole general design of those machines and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
That was a field I never thought I wanted to get into aerospace.
Yeah.
Either because I was in the Navy, I wanted to do something with the military, or get into aerospace. Never thought I would be in heavy machine industry or tunneling.
Right. Yeah.
But they're just impressive machines.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and being able to go to the job sites, I was fortunate enough to do that and go in these tunnels, and it was neat.
That's
so
cool.
You never know where your career is going to take you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
just like the technology itself was so interesting. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I only know a little bit about those, and it's not something that it's sort of niche in a way. It's like a very specific area.
It is.
But the amount of knowledge that has to go into it, like the historical knowledge of the designers, and like how to do these designs is got to be really important. I mean, I remember, so I was following the Seattle Big Bertha thing, and I learned more about boring machines during that than I had ever learned in my life. And I was like, it's a really hard problem, because you're just going through stuff that it changes constantly, what you're going through.
You can take core samples along your route, but that's a tiny little sample. You don't know You just gotta, it's from experience. That company has been around for 70, 80 years. So 70, 80 years of experience of just kind of knowing what the Earth's going to be like.
Yeah.
But it's still even a guess, right?
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. That's
so
really
you got to build it for anything that can come up.
Yeah. And with those types of things, it's so hard to model like what the Earth is like. Even if you're like, oh, okay, well, I know we got this kind of formation and that kind of dirt and whatever. Like coming up with a model that's good enough to actually do it, make any decisions based on it is so challenging that you must rely a lot on testing. Mm-hmm. And that's where like being an established company with designs that are working is like, it's so hard to get into a field like that unless you've got it, because you could throw together something and you're like, oh, I think this would work, and you're going to make the same mistakes they've made that they were making for the first 20 years, and then they fixed it.
Well, in that field, because those machines, there's not a lot of prototyping or anything. We're building one-off machines. Mm-hmm. So you build it, and you give it to the customer, and they're using it.
Yeah. Right?
There's not a lot of... It's all from experience.
Right.
So I did a lot of reading after I started there. Looking up old machines, reading about them, reading the operator's manuals on them so I could learn how they worked. Wow. And then this goes back to never saying no to an opportunity. I volunteered to go to the field as much as possible because you learn best from the people using this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I just picked their ears constantly. Go in, watch them operate, help them work on it, help them, shovel muck.
Yeah.
Get dirty with them. Then, build that rapport with the people, the end user, essentially, right?
Yeah. So that makes a ton of sense. Getting a feel for it and intuition. There's always this debate about whether engineering is like an applied science. I don't really love that term, but an applied science, if you will. Or if it's more like an artisan sort of thing where you're like creating something from a sort of craft perspective, kind of more like an artist would, or a craftsperson would. And I think it really varies from job to job. I've seen, some jobs are, when I was in an industry that had really old technology in it that they've just like incrementally adjusted, a lot of the designers were just like, it was just intuition for them. Mm-hmm. They were like, I think this shape will work. Yeah. And like, they don't know why. Like they're just like, feel it. That's a good one. Yeah. It's like, that's a winner right there. And they were pretty good. Right? And then, after testing for months, you'd be like, wow, that was actually right. And I think that it's tough. And then there's some jobs that are just like, there's like none of that, where you're just like purely doing like simulation and you're just doing the calculation. So there's a little bit of both.
But I think even those jobs that you're still doing all that, you use your past experience to at least have an idea where to start, right?
Right.
So
yeah, you can't just apply equations from start to finish on any design. There are too many possibilities.
Yeah.
You have to narrow it down based on your intuition.
If you don't have a background, like a mechanical background, say, or a hands-on background, when you start wherever you're working, if you have the opportunity to go, if your company has a shop or a lab or something like that, make friends with those guys. Mm-hmm. Make friends with the machinists. They'll give you shit about your design because you made something stupid.
They will.
But take it from them and learn.
Yeah.
And if you can get a rapport with them, it helps so much because it gets your shit done so much faster. Because they'll put you at the top of the list. Yeah. Because you're willing to go in there and learn. Yeah. And not think that you know everything because you have a degree, right? Yeah. Because those guys have been doing it for 30 years. Yeah. They know more than you do.
That's right. Yeah, I learned a lot from my first experience in the machine shop with the machinists who were like, here's how to do it. Also, they got me before I was like a full engineer, and so they were like, you know what annoys me about engineers? And you gotta have a little, a little humility. They're gonna give you shit, but it is really worth just sort of learning from them. They're gonna give you a lot of really good advice.
They will,
and it's definitely worth it. I agree. I totally second or whatever that.
Yeah, and that's what I did with our field service guys in that mining company. There was always a disconnect between engineering and the manufacturing, and then the field service guys that were running it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody blamed everybody else.
Oh yeah.
Engineers don't know how to design the machine. Well, you guys aren't using it right. Well, the guys didn't build it right.
Yeah.
Or they would. Something else that I had noticed was they would, when they were building the machines, they would just go and change some of the design because they knew it didn't work. And so they would change it to what they knew worked because they use it all the time. But they never go back and tell engineering. So engineering still designs it the same way because they think that it's okay. So I always try to get good with the guys on the shop floor, the field service guys. So they would actually just out bullshitting over a beer or something. They'd tell me, "Oh, that thing you designed? What were you thinking? You're an idiot. Don't do that."
Yeah. We fixed it for you.
Yeah. All right, well, I won't do that next time.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually a really good point because, when if there's changeover, if, somebody retires or whatever, and the person who always fixed it, but nobody knew to change the plans on that, the as-bills were not updated on the drawings, the next time around, that ends up being a huge flaw. To what do you attribute your success? You've been very successful.
Not saying no. Being open to opportunities. I think that's a big one. Starting to learn to do that networking. And not... I've noticed not all engineers. Some engineers do think that they're maybe above the guys working on the shop floor. I'd never try to do that. Well, also because I was a technician. I was a guy working on those before, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I'm open to everybody's opinion, inputs.
Yeah.
The guys using it, they know what they're doing. They have inputs. They got very, very smart inputs.
Yeah. Their intuition is probably better than yours. I mean, I think that's like one of the things that's really hard as an engineer to admit sometimes is that the person who builds this stuff, who works with it physically every day, they gain a lot of intuition by working with it with their hands.
Well, because you design it and then you move on to the next thing. So, and then
they put it together and then they saw how it actually.
Yeah. And then luck. There's always a little bit of luck.
Yes.
I got lucky that I ran into my buddy, right?
Yeah.
So.
Totally, yeah. No, I would agree with that. Yeah, sometimes people are like, how did you end up specifically, like what was this? Like, was this your plan the whole time? And there's a certain amount of planning that goes in,
sure.
But realistically, I mean, you just pick like a direction to head and then like stuff kind of happens, but I had no idea this was specifically what I was going to do.
If you don't fight the flow, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like you say, I want to go this direction, and then just go.
Yeah. Well, and
see what happens.
You've got your experience. You started out in a tech internship. You moved into doing a technology that you didn't really know much about before, in mining. You had a stint in the public sector, and now you ended up in aerospace, which is where you intended to end up eventually. But if you had said aerospace or nothing early on, that might not have happened for you. Who knows? Maybe it would have. But it's one of those things that it's good to take opportunities as they present themselves, and then also know when to say no or say I want to do something else now. Don't be afraid to do that. I have taken jobs and 2 months later left them and just decided this isn't for me. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to try something that might not be exactly what you were going for either.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, right, like, if you're not, like you were mentioning, working someplace for a couple months and then leaving, you're in charge of your life, right? If you're not happy where you're at, you got to find something you're happy with.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to do something you didn't think you wanted to do. Don't try it. Like, until you try it, you don't know.
That's
right.
That is very true.
So.
Yeah. Well, and when I started out, I was like, well, I'm gonna be a tech CEO, obviously. I mean, that was like my attitude, and then later on in my career, I'm like, what really matters is quality of life. Like that's like I'm like yeah. Like I was like really like, oh, I want the money and the glory, and I'm like, that's not me now. But at the time, I was like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
I want this. And
I want my time off.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly.
Yeah. Time off.
I'll work late. I'll come in on a weekend once in a while if I have to. Show that I'm willing to put the work in. Mm-hmm. But I also want to be able to go screw around as much as I can.
Go have some fun. Have a good personal life. I mean, it's tough. Some engineers end up becoming married to the job or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and if that's what you want and you're happy with it, then by all means, do it. Right?
Yeah. But you gotta know what you want.
Yeah.
And that's for you. You need your time. Same here. I mean, I need to like read philosophy all summer. Like that's like part of like what I need in my, or like what I think I need or what I want or whatever. And so I'm like, yeah, this is for me. I'm willing to go this other route because I see something in it that I actually value and I want more than maybe what I thought I wanted before or whatever. So yeah.
Well, and that's another thing. When the average age of your students are early 20s.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I wanted in my early 20s.
Yeah. I had some bad ideas about what I wanted in my early 20s.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read somewhere once that the average person goes through 8 careers in their lifetime or something, right?
That's got to be increasing as time goes on.
So,
it seems like...
You don't know. Yeah. I mean, take a chance that you might like it.
yeah, totally. And like having that like 2-month job on your resume, it's not as big a deal as some people make it out to be.
Yeah.
Somebody might ask you about it in an interview, and you just say, "Oh yeah, that job sucked." You can explain it.
Yeah.
Or you could just say, "Oh, it wasn't for me." But there are lots of ways to deal with that. Don't spend years of your life in a spot that you don't want to be in just because you're afraid of what it'll look like on your resume.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to live. And so here's your soapbox. So what would what parting words? You've given a lot of good advice, I think, to our students out there. So anything that you'd like to leave them with, and then I'll refill this glass.
Yeah. Okay. So I got to do this quick. I don't know. School was tough, but I mean, you get through it, right? It's only 4 years. Yeah. Just once you start working, don't be afraid to volunteer for stuff. Mm-hmm. Don't say no to opportunities. I think that's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not saying kiss your boss's ass or anything like that because your coworkers will find out that that's who you are really quick. You don't need to volunteer and say yes to everything, right?
Right.
But definitely be open to experiences, I guess, is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. That's very good advice. Very good advice. That's advice I try to follow in my own life. So yeah, I think it's good.
And don't think you're better than other people at the company.
Oh yeah, you're actually no better than anybody, I would say.
Well, yeah.
Like, my opinion is, we're all pieces of shit. That's just my own personal opinion.
I could go down that road with you.
Yeah, but the good news is that's okay. So that's I mean, we're all you're not better than anybody else, and
Well, I guess not better than anybody else, but don't think you know more than other people.
Oh yeah.
Right. I guess that's what I was maybe trying to say.
Yeah.
A little nicer way of saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. There's always something you can learn from somebody.
Yes.
And that's like even if I'm like this person. Yeah, they're the whiner of the group or whatever. But like you could probably still learn something from them.
Well, you learn not to do that.
Yeah, you could learn not to do that. That's a very yes.
No, and that's something else. Like, I still look for opportunities to learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So any chance I get, if there's a seminar or a free class that I can get through work, then I take it. If it's gonna help me. Even if it's not 100% specific to the job I'm doing right now, it might be relevant to something I'm doing next year.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something I'm interested in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Oh, it's one of the joy. I think developing that enjoyment of learning is so valuable. Obviously, I like it, but yeah, I think it's something that I've noticed people who age gracefully and enjoy their like later years and stuff are people who just like are always still learning, right? They're interested in things like, wow, here's a new thing I didn't even know about. Like I really think it's a good thing to understand instead of like holding tightly to what you know, like being open to things you don't is very valuable. So well, thanks so much, Jeremiah. It's awesome having you here.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in a couple of years, so
it's been a while.
Good to have you back, and
it's good.
Yeah, I'll get you a refill, and I'll tell my students to thank their lucky stars. This is a really cool opportunity for them to get to see from someone who went through the program. We're in their seats just a few years back, where they've gone, how successful you've been, and your understanding of how you've been successful and the advice you've given them. I think that's so valuable. So. Thanks so much for doing it and for braving traffic coming down from the northern regions. Right. So, yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.